Everyone in this room, I'm confident, can recite Morris's words that begin the American Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. But how many of you have asked, more perfect than what? More perfect in what way? The Philadelphia Convention met in order to create a set of rules and bylaws for the American state that would serve the values of the Declaration of Independence and do so more effectively than had the Articles of Confederation. Our founders apparently believed that it was necessary to establish and maintain national institutions of justice, to secure civil peace by federal instruments against insurrection, to arm the Union of States as a whole and not individually against predators, to promote opportunity and prosperity by national means, and this is the important phrase, in order to secure, as they put it, liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Like most law students of my generation, I was taught the Declaration of Independence, while important historically, had no legal status, because unlike the Constitution, it was not ratified by the people. Unlike the Articles, it was not ratified by the states. On this matter, as in so many others, I was turned around by the insights of the late Charles Black. Black argued that the Constitution was contrived as an organizational means of carrying out the project of the Declaration. That is, it was the organization of a state that would secure a society where no man was another man's sovereign. All men were created equal. Where there were certain rights that could not be sold or bartered or given away. They couldn't be alienated. Where the legitimacy of the government depended upon regularly securing the free consent of its people. Indeed, we know from the Declaration itself what the purpose of the American state is supposed to be. And it's not to provide for the common defense or secure the general welfare and so on. Everyone in this room can recite one passage from American literature. We could all do it in our heads just now. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. But now, this is the part I want you to focus on, that to protect these rights, governments are instituted among men. The purpose of government, according to the Declaration, the justification for the American seizure of sovereignty from the British colonial governments is to protect human rights, full stop. That's the American constitutional ethos. In light of our perilous experience with the Articles, some of the new rules and bylaws were pretty obvious. The American state needed a secure source of revenue in order to provide for its defense. It needed a system of checks and balances to prevent tyranny, which might well arise as a consequence of arming and responding to external threats. It needed to explicitly and implicitly guarantee rights of conscience, and indeed to build in the exercise of the conscience as part of governing, whether in juries or polling booths or in the councils of state. So thought the founding generation. But it seems that these struggles must be refought by every generation. It hasn't been a good couple of years for the informal constitutional norms that support the American constitutional ethos. The president who vows to incarcerate his political opponents, who as a candidate refused to commit to accepting the verdict of the election, whose staff attempted to conspire with a hostile foreign power in cyber burglaries and cyber propaganda campaigns, who encourages violence against the press. Such a person is the embodiment of a troubling historical departure. A president who asserts the power to pardon himself, who attempts to coerce the head of the FBI to shelve an investigation into his aides, who exhorts naval officers to commit themselves to partisan declarations, who demeans judges on the basis of their ethnicity, who invents and persists in telling the now proven untruth that his predecessor was wiretapping him, who engages in a studied campaign to delegitimate the electoral process itself by falsely claiming that millions of votes have been stolen, and who uses the office of the presidency to enrich himself and his family. Such a person strikes, however haphazardly, at constitutional norms that are not codified, but they dwell in the consciences of the men who have held that office. Of course, the President is not the only figure on the stage who seems heedless of those constitutional norms that are meant to protect our liberties. Incivility in our politics, the petty harassment of officials, the intolerance of the very expression of ideas with which we disagree, and the cultivation of recovered memories of historic shame are projects on which the President does not seem to have a monopoly. But these are also threats as to which we must be vigilant. Moreover, the weakening of our constitutional institutions and of our confidence in them will have a profound consequence for world order, which was the subject of the chapter that I contributed to this book. A growing lack of national cohesion and self-confidence will excite external threats. But threats need not necessarily bring ruin. As Archibald MacLeish once put it, they may be the grit with which the oyster mends his shell. The Constitution, written and unwritten, is constructed to enable us to carry out the project of the Declaration. The Declaration expresses a liberal ethos of tolerance, social mobility based on talent and effort, a pluralist society with power derived from consent. It's the Constitution that provides the mechanism for determining our futures. How and whether we will realize the vision of the Declaration is something that's in our hands. New threats to that vision, as well as the inherited ones, are the grist for its operation. I think that's what Barack Obama had in mind when he spoke at the 50th anniversary of the Selma March. He asked, what greater form of patriotism is there than the belief that America is not yet finished, that we are strong enough to be self-critical, that each successive generation can look upon our imperfections and decide that it is in our power to remake this nation to more closely align with our highest ideals. Of course, this means it's also in our power to degrade these ideals. I take it the purpose of this book and the purpose of our getting together is to prevent that.